Imagine a plane so controversial pilots feared it, passengers ignored it, and accountants cursed it. Yet one airline kept it alive like a pet dinosaur. That was Lufthansa with the MD-11. Today, we're unpacking how this notorious trigit went from aviation's awkward misfit to Lufthansa's unlikely workhorse. The MD-11 was supposed to be the glow-up of the DC-10. McDonnell Douglas stretched the fuselage, added winglets, gave it shiny new engines, and promised airlines a long-range trigit that could compete with Boeing's 767 and the new Airbus A330. On paper, it was sleek, efficient, and futuristic. In reality, it was like ordering a Tesla and getting a used Prius with racing stripes. The range was shorter than advertised. The fuel burn wasn't as efficient as promised. Airlines quickly realized they'd been sold a dream jet that flew more like a compromise. Even with a performance improvement program, the MD-11 couldn't shake its reputation. Passengers weren't thrilled either. It was less comfortable than competitors. And let's just say turbulence in an MD-11 felt like riding a mechanical bull at full tilt. So airlines gave it the side eye. Pilots muttered under their breath, and passengers booked away from it. But here's the plot twist. What flopped in passenger service ended up becoming an absolute cargo legend. Airlines like American, Delta, and Singapore ditched the MD-11 fast. But cargo carriers? They saw gold in the junkyard. FedEx, UPS, and Lufthansa Cargo scooped up MD-11s and realized, hey, it doesn't matter if passengers hate it, because boxes don't complain. Lufthansa Cargo introduced the MD-11F in 1998, phasing out their older, thirstier 747-200 freighters. For 2 decades, the MD-11 became the backbone of Lufthansa's night-flying cargo empire, hauling everything from electronics to life animals across continents. The plane had a niche. It was cheaper than a brand new 777F, carried more than a 767F, and had 3 engines that satisfied over-water rules at the time. Lufthansa basically turned a problem child into a loyal workhorse. But why did Lufthansa keep this thing around for so long, even as shinier options rolled in? Simple answer, money. And oh boy, let's be real. Airlines don't run on nostalgia, they run on spreadsheets. By the early 2000s, Lufthansa had already paid off its MD-11s, meaning the planes were dirt cheap to operate. Every extra year they kept them flying was like free money. The MD-11 also filled a perfect mid-capacity cargo role. Too much freight for a 767? Not enough to justify a 747? Boom, send in the trigit. Lufthansa's accountants loved it because replacing the whole fleet with brand new 777FS would have been like swapping out your perfectly fine Honda Civic for a garage full of Lamborghinis. Great for flexing, terrible for the wallet. But just when Lufthansa planned to retire the MD-11 for good, a little thing called 2020 happened, and the world went from retire old planes to keep everything that still has wings. By 2019, Lufthansa Cargo was prepping the MD-11's grand farewell. The newer, sleeker 77F was on deck to take over. Retirements were scheduled, speeches were written, and then COVID slammed the aviation world like a ton of bricks. Suddenly, cargo demand went through the stratosphere. Passenger flights vanished, belly cargo disappeared, and the world needed freighters fast. Guess who got a second life? The MD-11. Lufthansa kept them flying a whole year longer than planned, delaying retirement until October 2021. The MD-11, once aviation's awkward misfit, was suddenly the hero, hauling masks, medical supplies, and essentials when the world needed them most. Not bad for a plane everyone else had already abandoned. But every encore has to end eventually. And when Lufthansa finally pulled the plug, they did it in style. Because Germans don't just retire planes, they throw a farewell party. October 16, 2021. Aviation geeks across Europe had their cameras ready. Lufthansa's last MD-11F, registered DALCC, touched down in Frankfurt wearing a special farewell livery. Painted across its side, "Thank you MD-11 farewell." For a cargo plane, that's basically the red carpet treatment. After more than 23 years of service, the Tridget that had been mocked, mishandled, and misunderstood got its final bow. Lufthansa closed the chapter, fully transitioning to the 777F fleet quieter, greener, and way more efficient. But to the thousands who flew, maintained, or just photographed the MD-11, it wasn't just a retirement. It was the end of an era. But the MD-11 story doesn't stop there. Because while Lufthansa closed the book, a few die-hard fans, FedEx, UPS, Western Global, kept this dinosaur alive. And that's where the real cult status begins. Just because Lufthansa said goodbye doesn't mean the MD-11 vanished. Nope, this Tridget lives on, mostly in the United States. FedEx still flies dozens, UPS keeps a squadron, and Western Global uses them like vintage workhorses. It's like that one high school band you thought broke up, but then you find out they're still touring, just at county fairs instead of stadiums. The MD-11 might not headline anymore, but it still has a fan base. And as long as cargo keeps moving, those three engines will keep howling through the night skies. But why are these carriers still flying what looks like aviation's Nokia brick phone? Well, turns out there are some good reasons and a few weird ones. First reason, cost. These jets are fully paid off, and in aviation, a free plane is a profitable plane. Second, capacity. The MD-11 carries more than a 767F, but burns less fuel than a 747, making it the just right option for medium-haul cargo. Third reason, conversions. Airlines dumped passenger MD-11s in the 2000s, and cargo operators grabbed them cheap, turning cabins into flying warehouses. It was recycling, aviation style. And here's the kicker. FedEx has already said they'll keep MD-11s flying until at least 2032. That means these trijets will outlive TikTok trends, political scandals, and probably 3 more iPhones. But let's get real. This plane has a cult reputation, not just because it stuck around, but because it was difficult. Ask any pilot, and you'll get either a love letter or a horror story. The MD-11 earned a reputation as one of the trickiest commercial jets to fly. High approach speeds, small wings that required constant attention, and landings? Let's just say they were sporty. The Tridget was infamous for bouncy touchdowns, nicknamed the Yard Dart by some pilots. But for others, flying it was a badge of honor. It demanded skill, precision, and nerves of steel. Pilots who mastered it wore that like a crown. In fact, some still swear was the most rewarding plane they ever flew. It was unpredictable, yes, but also unforgettable. The MD-11 was like that one eccentric professor who made your life hell, but also made you smarter. And that's where the magic lies. Because the MD-11 wasn't just an aircraft, it was a survivor. And Lufthansa? They turned survival into strategy. Here's the bottom line. Lufthansa didn't keep the MD-11 because they loved it. They kept it because it worked. It was practical. It made money. And when the pandemic hit, it even saved the day. By 2025, Lufthansa Cargo is all in on the Boeing 777F, with orders for next-gen 777-8Fs coming soon. Quieter, greener, cheaper to run. But here's the truth. None of that would have been possible without the decades of work the MD-11 put in. So yes, it was controversial. Yes, it was outdated. Yes, it bounced landings like a pogo stick. But Lufthansa showed the world that sometimes the underdog isn't just worth keeping, it's worth celebrating. Which brings us to the final approach, because this Tridget story isn't just about aviation. It's about stubbornness, strategy, and squeezing value out of something everyone else abandoned. If you enjoyed this trip through aviation's misfit toys, smash that like button, subscribe for more bold aviation history deep dives, and tell me in the comments what other forgotten planes deserve their own spotlight. The A340, the Lockheed TriStar, or maybe the 747 SP. You decide, I'll deliver. Until next time, keep your tray tables up, seatbelts fastened, and never underestimate a Trigit with attitude.